Imagine you are a professional athlete. You find yourself on the tennis court of the iconic Wimbledon Championship. Your opponent is about to serve when suddenly you start to sweat profusely. Your heart rate spikes and your vision gets blurry. You hear noises coming from the crowd. I hope you miss. Boom! The ball comes and you completely miss it. This is exactly what happened to Yana Novona, a professional tennis player who choked, and this was deemed one of the most famous collapses in sport. But in reality, she isn't the only one, as this happens more commonly in athletics than you may initially think. So you might be thinking, what is choking? It's an acute decrease in skill execution and performance where one's self-expected standards are normally achievable due to increased anxiety under perceived pressure. So the social facilitation model describes how the presence of an audience can either enhance or impede our performance. When someone is performing a well-practiced or simple task, the presence of an audience can increase our performance. If someone is performing an unpracticed or complex task, the presence of an audience can decrease our performance. Now, this model doesn't really describe choking because choking is neither a skill nor a motivational problem, as athletes are well-practiced and skilled and they have the motivation to do well. Now, I myself am a figure skater and have been skating for 15 years, so I have my fair share of choking experiences. Boo! This is not how I want to perform by any means. So the question still stands, why do athletes choke? Two attention-based models can describe choking. The first one is the distraction model, which involves attending to task-irrelevant cues. And then the second is the self-focus model, which involves attending to step-by-step rules of motor control. So let's dive deeper into the distraction model. Let's take a basketball game, for example. There are many distractors and noise that surround a basketball player. But we can easily select which cues we want to focus on, such as a basketball net. However, under heightened anxiety, we struggle to select stimuli, and thus our attention shifts towards irrelevant cues. These distractions can be internal, such as internal worries, or they can be external, such as a noisy crowd cheering on for another team, or even like blinding lights. Next, we'll look at the self-focus model, which involves athletes consciously attending to monitoring and controlling their motor movements. And this interferes with the automatic nature of movement control and muscle memory. So, to better understand this model, think of a time where you were walking, and maybe you suddenly got self-conscious about the way that you were walking, that you were focusing very intently on every step you take. Maybe you put your left arm out with your left foot, and you look a little silly because you completely forgot how to walk. So walking, an automatic task, has now become difficult because you're focusing too much conscious attention on your motor movements. Now, thankfully, there are multiple interventions for these two attention-based models. If you find yourself getting easily distracted in high-pressure situations, you can benefit from pre-performance routines such as meditating to clear your mind. Keywords like solid also acts as a mental anchor to break negative thought patterns. And deep breathing exercises are always a good idea to ground yourself. If you find yourself focusing too much on your skill execution, you can benefit from positive self-talk, as this increases personal confidence. Left-hand contractions are also a pretty neat intervention. And it is pretty neat because as you contract your left hand, you activate the right hemisphere of your brain. And this side of your brain is more responsible for automatic motor performances, whereas the left side of your brain is more responsible for like the analytical step-by-step processes. Acclimatization is another great intervention to help athletes in high-pressure situations, and being videotaped is a great example of this intervention. Now, finally, visualization is also another beneficial intervention. This is essentially where you visualize yourself performing a skill or doing a program. And this technique can be enhanced through the encoding specificity principle, where essentially you encode environmental cues as you encode information. Thus, imagining yourself wearing the same uniform or being in the same location as your competition will increase its effects. Finally, this visualization is pretty neat because the same part of your brain is activated when you imagine an action versus actually doing the action. So your brain can't really tell the difference. And this is similar to a study that showed that if someone imagines a bizarre scenario, such as proposing to a vending machine, it actually falsely led them to remember that they performed that action. Now, choking doesn't only happen in sports. It can happen during a presentation, it can happen during a musical performance, or even a job interview. But remember that choking doesn't always need to be a bad thing. It means that you are good at what you do and you want to do it well, showing that you care a lot about your performance. So before you get choked up about my inspirational words, I want you to take a moment before your next exam or important presentation. Take a moment of mindfulness, take some deep breaths, visualize yourself succeeding, and then go and make that a reality. Thank you.